The dying man's grip weakened as Eleanor Harper Stevens cradled his head in her lap, her tears falling onto his weathered face like the first drops of a summer storm. Her wedding dress, once pristine white, was now stained with the rusty red of her father's blood. The sound of gunfire had faded, but the echo of violence hung in the air of the small New Mexico church. "Eleanor," her father whispered, his voice barely audible over her quiet sobs, "you must go, they'll come back." "I can't leave you, Pa," she cried, clutching his hand tighter. "Not like this." A shadow fell across them, and Eleanor looked up to see a tall figure standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh sunlight of 1873. She reached for her father's gun, fingers trembling. "Easy now," the man said, stepping forward with his hands raised. He was dressed in dust-covered riding clothes, a worn leather vest over his shirt, and a Stetson that had seen better days. "I'm not here to cause harm." As he moved closer, Eleanor could see his face tanned from the sun, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with the gun on his hip. His dark hair fell to his shoulders beneath his hat. "Name's Vincent Wade," he said, kneeling beside them. "Heard the shots from the trail. Your father," Eleanor nodded, unable to speak through her grief. Vincent leaned over to check the older man's wounds, his expression grim. "These men who did this bandits, the Harlow gang," her father gasped, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "Came for revenge, I testified, against their leader last spring." Eleanor wiped her tears with the back of her hand, leaving a smear of blood across her cheek. "Today was my wedding day," she said, her voice hollow. "My fiancé, Thomas, they shot him too, outside, before they came in for Pa." Her father's grip tightened suddenly on her hand. "Eleanor, listen to me," he said, his voice gaining strength from somewhere deep inside. "You need to get to your aunt in Colorado Springs. She'll take care of you." "Pa, please," Eleanor begged. "Save your strength. Promise me," he insisted. Vincent Wade looked from the dying man to his daughter, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Sir," he said to Eleanor's father, "I'm heading north myself. I can see your daughter safely to Colorado Springs." The old man's eyes fixed on Vincent with the intensity of someone measuring a man's worth in one glance. "You do that, for strangers?" "I would," Vincent replied without hesitation. Eleanor's father seemed to search the cowboy's face before giving a small nod. "My Eleanor," he said, turning back to his daughter, tears in his eyes. "So brave, so stubborn, like your mother." "Pa, don't talk like that." "You're going to be fine," Eleanor said, the words sounding hollow even to her own ears. Her father smiled faintly. "Always trying to fix everything." His breathing became more labored. "Trust this man, Eleanor. He has honest eyes." Vincent Wade moved closer, speaking directly to the dying man. "Sir, I swear to you I'll get your daughter safely to her aunt. She'll come to no harm while she's with me." The old man looked up at Eleanor once more. "My girl," he whispered. "Pa, please," Eleanor wept, holding him closer. "Don't leave me alone." Vincent placed a gentle hand on her shoulder as her father's eyes began to lose focus. "He'll see you safe with me," the cowboy promised as the older man's gaze shifted to him one last time. With a final, shuddering breath, Eleanor's father was gone, leaving her alone in a blood-stained wedding dress with a stranger who had just pledged to protect her. Vincent gave her a moment with her grief before speaking softly. "Miss Stevens, I'm sorry, but we need to go. The Harlow gang might return and we should be far away when they do." Eleanor looked up, her tear-streaked face hardening with the realization of her new reality. "I need to bury him properly," she said. "And Thomas," Vincent nodded, "we'll do it quickly and then we must leave." They buried her father and fiancé behind the small church, with Vincent digging the graves while Eleanor gathered wildflowers to place upon them. She had changed from her ruined wedding dress into a simple traveling outfit from her trunk, which had been packed for her honeymoon journey, a journey she would never take. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the freshly turned earth, Vincent approached her. "It's time, Miss Stevens." Eleanor knelt one last time by her father's grave, placing her hand on the wooden cross Vincent had fashioned. "Goodbye, Pa," she whispered. "I'll make you proud." When she stood, there was a new resolve in her eyes. "I'm ready, Mr. Wade." They rode out as night fell, Eleanor on her own horse and Vincent leading the way. She didn't look back at the little church where her life had shattered just hours before. The only way was forward now, into the unknown with a man whose only credential was a promise made to her dying father. The first few days of their journey were mostly silent. Eleanor was wrapped in grief, and Vincent seemed content to let her be. He was respectful, always making sure she was comfortable at their campsites, sharing his provisions without complaint and keeping watch while she slept. On the fourth night, as they sat by the campfire in a small clearing sheltered by cottonwood trees, Eleanor finally spoke more than a few words. "You never asked why I was getting married in that little church in the middle of nowhere," she said, her voice quiet against the crackling of the fire. Vincent looked up from the coffee he was brewing. "Figured you'd tell me if you wanted to." Eleanor pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Thomas was a rancher. We'd known each other since we were children. It wasn't a passionate love, but it was comfortable, safe." She paused, watching the flames dance. "Pa wanted me to have security after he was gone. He'd been sick for a while." "I'm sorry," Vincent said simply. "What about you, Mr. Wade? What takes you north?" Eleanor asked. Vincent poked at the fire with a stick. "Got some land up near Colorado Springs. Been away too long. Time to go home." "And is there someone waiting for you?" The question slipped out before Eleanor could stop herself. A shadow passed over Vincent's face. "No, not anymore." The conversation lapsed into silence again, but something had shifted between them. A door had opened, just slightly. The next morning, as they rode through a meadow painted with wildflowers, Eleanor noticed Vincent watching her. "What is it, Mr. Wade?" she asked. "Just thinking it's good to see some color in your cheeks again," he said. "Grief takes its time, but the living must go on living." Eleanor considered his words. "Is that what you did, after whoever was waiting for you wasn't anymore?" Vincent's jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. "Yes. Though I didn't do it very well for a long time. And now I'm trying to make good on some promises I made, to myself and others." They rode on in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a soothing metronome to Eleanor's thoughts. For the first time since the attack, she found herself noticing the beauty around her, the open sky, the wildflowers, the distant mountains. And she had to admit, the strong, steady presence of the man riding beside her. That night, as they made camp by a small stream, Eleanor watched Vincent as he tended to the horses. There was a gentleness to him that belied his rugged appearance. He spoke softly to the animals, his large hands moving with surprising grace. When he returned to the fire, he found Eleanor with her hair down, combing through the long auburn waves with her fingers. "I can turn away if you'd prefer privacy," he offered, stopping a respectful distance away. "No need," she said. "I'm decent. Just trying to sort out this mess before it becomes impossible." Vincent sat down across from her. "My sister used to complain about the same thing, said her hair was determined to become one big knot if she rode for more than an hour." "You have a sister?" Eleanor asked, surprised by this glimpse into his past. "Had," Vincent corrected quietly. "She passed some years back. Fever took her and her husband both." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said, setting down her comb. "Do you have any other family?" Vincent shook his head. "Parents gone." "No brothers or sisters left. Just my aunt in Colorado Springs now. My mother died when I was young." They sat in silence for a moment, two people alone in the world, connected by circumstance and shared loss. "Tell me about your land," Eleanor said, changing the subject. "What's it like?" Vincent's face softened. "Beautiful, valley nestled between mountains, creek running through it, good grazing land. I started building a house before I left, though it's probably in need of work now." "Why did you leave it?" Vincent stared into the fire. "War came." "Then after, I had some things to set right." Eleanor sensed there was more to the story, but didn't press. Everyone had the right to their secrets, especially out here where the past was often something people came west to escape. As the days passed, they fell into a comfortable routine. They would ride from dawn until late afternoon, making camp before dusk. Vincent hunted for their meals and Eleanor prepared them. They shared the tasks of setting up and breaking down camp, working together with increasing ease. They also talked more, sharing stories from their lives. Eleanor told him about growing up the daughter of a judge, about her dreams of becoming a teacher before her father's illness had changed their plans. Vincent spoke of his time as a cavalry scout during the war, of the beauty of the Western Territories, of his hope to build a successful ranch. What he didn't talk about was what had kept him away from that land for so long, or who had once been waiting for him there. Eleanor noticed, but didn't ask. She was developing a respect for this quiet, honorable man who had promised her father to keep her safe. A week into their journey, they encountered their first real trouble. They had stopped at a small trading post to replenish supplies when Eleanor noticed Vincent suddenly tense beside her. "What is it?" she whispered. "Men at the bar," he murmured. "Keep your head down and finish your shopping." "Meet me by the horses in 5 minutes." Eleanor did as he asked, though her heart raced as she selected coffee and flour from the store's shelves. When she stepped outside, Vincent was already waiting, their horses saddled and ready. "The Harlow gang." She asked as they rode away faster than their usual pace. Vincent nodded grimly. "2 of them. Don't think they saw us, but we can't take chances." They pushed hard for the rest of the day, not stopping until well after dark. When they finally made camp, it was a cold one, no fire that might attract attention. "I'm sorry," Vincent said as they ate a meager supper of jerky and hardtack. "I had hoped we'd left them behind." "It's not your fault," Eleanor assured him. "You're risking your life to help me." Vincent looked at her, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "I made a promise to your father." "Is that the only reason you're still here?" Eleanor asked, surprised by her own boldness. There was a long pause before Vincent answered. "No," he said finally, "not anymore." The admission hung between them, neither quite ready to examine what it meant. That night they slept closer together than they had before. For safety's sake, they told themselves, though both knew there was more to it than that. The next morning they rose before dawn and continued north. The landscape was changing, becoming more rugged as they approached the foothills of the Rockies. The air was cooler, the vegetation different. It felt like entering another world. "We should reach Colorado Springs in about 4 days," Vincent said as they stopped to water the horses at a clear mountain stream. "Your aunt's name, you said it was Margaret?" "Yes, Margaret Taylor. She runs a boarding house on the north side of town. At least she did when Pa last heard from her." Vincent nodded. "I know of it. Good reputation." Eleanor looked at him, suddenly realizing what reaching their destination would mean. "And then you'll go to your land." "That's the plan," Vincent said, though something in his voice had changed. Eleanor turned away, busying herself with filling their canteens. She wasn't ready to think about parting ways with him, not yet. That evening, as they made camp in a sheltered grove, a storm began to brew. Dark clouds gathered quickly and the wind picked up, bringing the scent of rain. "We need better shelter," Vincent said, looking up at the threatening sky. "There's an old line shack about half a mile east that trappers use. Might not be much, but it'll keep us dry." They reached the small cabin just as the first heavy drops began to fall. It was indeed humble, one room with a small fireplace, a rough table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bed, but it was dry and had firewood stacked beside the hearth. Vincent busied himself with the fire while Eleanor arranged their bedrolls. The close quarters made them both more aware of each other than they had been on the trail. "I'll sleep by the door," Vincent said, keeping his eyes on the flames. "Don't be ridiculous," Eleanor replied. "It's cold and the floor is hard. We can share the bed. We're both adults." Vincent looked at her, surprise and something else flickering in his eyes. "Are you certain?" "I trust you, Vincent," she said simply. Using his first name for the first time, the storm raged outside, rain lashing against the small windows and thunder rolling across the mountains. Inside, they ate their supper in comfortable silence, the small cabin growing warm from the fire. When it was time to sleep, They lay side by side on the narrow bed, a respectful distance between them despite the limited space. Eleanor could feel the heat of Vincent's body, hear his steady breathing. It was strangely intimate yet comforting. "Vincent," she said softly into the darkness. "What happened to the person who was waiting for you?" For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his deep voice came quietly. "Her name was Rebecca. We were to be married when I returned from the war, but the fighting lasted longer than any of us expected. By the time I came home, she had wed another, a man who hadn't gone to fight." Eleanor turned to face him, though she could barely make out his profile in the dim light from the banked fire. "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago," Vincent said. "I left because staying meant watching her build a life with someone else. Took work as a scout, then a marshal, kept moving. And now you're going back." "I received word that she and her husband moved to California years ago. It's time I stopped running from ghosts." Eleanor reached out hesitantly and placed her hand on his arm. "Thank you for telling me." Vincent covered her hand with his own. "What about you?" "Will you stay with your aunt?" "I don't know," Eleanor admitted. "I haven't thought beyond getting there safely. You're young, you have time to build a new life." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "When Thomas proposed, I said yes because it seemed the sensible choice. He was kind and steady." "It wasn't, I didn't feel." "Passion," Vincent suggested. "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "Is that terrible of me to speak of him this way now that he's gone?" "No," Vincent said, turning to face her. "Honesty isn't terrible. Not feeling what you think you should doesn't make you wrong." They were close now, their faces inches apart in the darkness. Eleanor could feel Vincent's breath warm against her cheek. Her heart began to race. "Vincent," she whispered. "Eleanor," he replied, her name a caress on his lips. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Vincent leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, but when Eleanor responded, sliding her hand up to his shoulder, the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" Eleanor asked. "You're vulnerable, grieving. I promised your father I would protect you, not take advantage." Eleanor placed her palm against his cheek. "I'm not a child, Vincent. I know my own mind." "Even so," he said, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "We should sleep now. We have a long ride tomorrow." Eleanor wanted to protest but knew he was right. They needed time. This fragile thing between them was too important to rush. So she settled against him, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, and drifted off to the sound of rain on the roof and Vincent's steady heartbeat beneath her ear. The next morning brought clear skies and a new awareness between them. There were shy smiles over breakfast, fingers touching as they passed cups of coffee, glances that lingered longer than before. As they rode, they talked more openly about themselves, about their hopes and fears. Eleanor told Vincent about her desire to still become a teacher someday. Vincent spoke of his dreams for his ranch, the cattle he wanted to raise, the crops he planned to grow. Neither mentioned what would happen when they reached Colorado Springs, though the question hung unspoken between them. They made good progress that day and the next. The mountains loomed larger, the air grew crisper, and signs of civilization became more frequent. Fenced pastures, the occasional distant farmhouse, wagon tracks on the trail. On what would be their last night on the trail, they camped near a small lake, the water reflecting the sunset in shades of gold and pink. After they had eaten, Vincent took Eleanor's hand and led her to the lakeshore. "Tomorrow we'll reach Colorado Springs," he said, watching the last light fade from the sky. "Yes," Eleanor replied, her heart constricting at the thought. "I've been thinking," Vincent said, turning to face her, "about what happens next." Eleanor looked up at him, hope and fear warring within her. "And what have you decided?" "Nothing," Vincent said, "because it's not just my decision to make." He took both her hands in his expression serious yet tender. "Eleanor, I know we've known each other only a short time and under circumstances neither of us would have chosen. I know you're still healing from terrible losses, But these past weeks, riding beside you, talking with you, seeing your courage and grace, I've come to care for you deeply." Eleanor's breath caught. "Vincent, please let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm not even asking you to feel the same way. All I'm asking is for time. Time to see if what's growing between us might become something lasting." Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes, but they were different from the ones she had shed at her father's side. These were tears of something like hope. "My land is a half-day's ride from town," Vincent continued. "You could stay with your aunt, get settled. I could call on you properly if you'd allow it. We could come to know each other without the pressure of the trail or the shadow of what happened." "Is that what you want?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "What I want is to be worthy of the trust your father placed in me and the trust you've shown me. What I want is to see you smile every day. What I want is a chance to love you as you deserve to be loved." Eleanor stepped closer, resting her hands on his chest. "I think," she said slowly, "that I would like that very much." Vincent's smile was like the sunrise, brightening his whole face. He leaned down and kissed her, this time without hesitation or doubt. Eleanor wound her arms around his neck, feeling for the first time since her world had collapsed that perhaps there might be happiness ahead after all. When they parted, Vincent kept her close. "I can't promise it will be easy," he said. "Building a life rarely is, especially out here." "I don't need easy," Eleanor replied. "I just need real." They stood by the lake until the stars came out, making plans, sharing dreams, stealing kisses. When they finally returned to their camp, they slept in each other's arms, the night peaceful around them. The next day, they rode into Colorado Springs side by side. The town was bustling, larger than Eleanor had expected, with proper buildings lining the streets instead of the rough frontier settlements they had passed through. They found her aunt's boarding house easily enough, a tidy two-story building with a well-kept garden out front. Margaret Taylor was a warm, no-nonsense woman who welcomed her niece with open arms and tears, having already received word of her brother's death through the territorial telegraph. "And who might this be?" she asked, eyeing Vincent with open curiosity. "Aunt Margaret, this is Vincent Wade," Eleanor said. "He's the one who brought me safely here as Pa wished." Margaret studied him with shrewd eyes. "Well, Mr. Wade, it seems I owe you a debt of gratitude." "No debt, madam," Vincent replied. "It was my honor." Later, after Eleanor had settled into her room and Vincent had secured lodging at the hotel for the night, they sat together on the boarding house porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in the distance. "Will you go to your land tomorrow?" Eleanor asked. "Yes," Vincent said. "I need to see what state it's in after all this time, but I'll be back in town by the end of the week." Eleanor nodded, trying not to show her disappointment at the separation, however brief. Vincent took her hand, rubbing his thumb across her knuckles. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "my land has a good view of Pikes Peak. On clear days, it seems close enough to touch. It sounds beautiful." "It is," Vincent agreed, "and lonely for one person." Eleanor looked at him, understanding his meaning. "Perhaps someday I might see it for myself." "I'd like that," Vincent said. "Very much." As twilight deepened around them, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought her here, the terrible loss, the fear, the uncertainty. But also the discovery of strength within herself she hadn't known she possessed, and the unexpected gift of meeting this man who now held her hand so tenderly. "Vincent," she said softly, "I want to thank you. Not just for keeping your promise to my father, but for helping me find hope again when I thought all was lost." Vincent lifted her hand to his lips. "Eleanor Stevens, bringing you safely here may have been a promise to your father, but loving you, that's a promise I'm making to you and to myself." Eleanor leaned against his shoulder, feeling for the first time in weeks that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The path ahead might not be easy, as Vincent had said, but they would walk it together. And that was enough. 1 year later, on a clear autumn day, Eleanor stood on the porch of the house that Vincent had built with his own hands. Their house now. She watched as he worked with the horses in the corral, his movements sure and confident. So much had changed in a year. After a proper courtship that had the whole town talking the judge's daughter and the rancher with the mysterious past, they had married in the spring. Eleanor had started teaching at the local school 3 days a week, fulfilling her long-held dream. Vincent's ranch was thriving with a small herd of cattle and fields of wheat and corn. And now, as her hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, Eleanor knew their family would soon grow. Vincent looked up, catching sight of her on the porch. His face broke into the smile that still made her heart race. He secured the gate and strode toward her, removing his hat as he climbed the steps. "Mrs. Wade," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners, "you're looking especially beautiful this evening." Eleanor laughed. "I'm looking especially round this evening, you mean?" Vincent placed his hand over hers on her belly. "Beautiful," he insisted, leaning down to kiss her. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Eleanor thought of her father. He would be proud, she knew, of the life she had built, of the love she had found. In the distance, Pike's Peak stood sentinel over their valley, just as Vincent had described it that day on her aunt's porch. Close enough to touch on clear days. A reminder of how far they had come and the heights still to climb together. "I love you, Vincent Wade," Eleanor said, leaning into his embrace. "And I love you, Eleanor Wade," he replied, his voice a promise kept and renewed each day. "Always."